the cost of the LMS itself, but then of course, if you're implementing an LMS for the first time, you may not realize it is a business system that needs to be implemented and managed. So you talked in one of your answers about, even building in requirements around who needs to use the system internally. But what other costs or headcount needs, which would be a cost to the business, should people consider when they're thinking about an LMS?
So I think it absolutely, from my perspective, it goes back to the headcount and the administration of the LMS, because Sarah, you said most people don't think about just what it takes to run one. And what I'll say is the headcount really is directly proportional to the amount of content or the number of users on the platform, but there are a lot of factors that go into that. The first one that I think about is the content development. Most organizations, if you're making the switch from ILT to self-paced training, you have to have that content development group that understands how to build that self-paced training. And along those same lines, if you're a small organization, you might have those content developers, give them administrative access to the LMS and have them publishing their own materials. But in some instances, the content developers just want to develop their courses. They don't want to manage new platform, or it's too much. You have such a large catalog that it's really not fair to ask those content developers to manage all of that. So you really do need to have that dedicated resource who specializes in the LMS and the administration, the publishing process, the QC of what you're deploying. And these people are also important to make sure that your catalog structure stays organized and clean. And I'm not just talking about the external facing catalog that your users will use, but the internal facing catalog, because that has an impact on how you run reports or how your administrative teams might look for content that needs to be updated or identify what needs to be, what needs new versions or what needs to be retired. So understanding that aspect of it is really important from a content perspective. Now, the next part, I mentioned was considering how many learners you have. It's a guarantee that no matter how technically savvy your audience is, a fair percentage of them will have questions or will need some sort of support. And your LMS administrators are obviously going to be the most knowledgeable people on the platform. And even if you're integrated with a customer support organization who takes and triages those initial requests, you're still going to get tapped for those questions for the new and novel support cases that come through that you may not have written a knowledge base article for, or the support agents haven't seen previously. And then, lastly, which is near and dear to my heart, is the learner experience. You absolutely have to have someone, whether they be on your marketing team or dedicated to your L&D organization, that is constantly looking at reviewing how your users are interacting with the system, looking at the search data, analyzing completion rates and scores for knowledge checks and exams, and diving into the survey data that you should be collecting. And just because your platform worked well when you launched doesn't mean it should or can stay the same for years on end. Your content evolves, web technologies evolve, even the capabilities of the platform that you're using will evolve. And you need to have someone who is dedicated to make sure that you have a pulse on what's current from a UX standpoint, and more importantly, from a learner expectation standpoint, so that you can execute that. And you need the staff on hand to deliver and actually do the execution, whether that be with your vendor, and there's costs associated with having your vendor provide you professional services, or being able to do it yourself. So circling back to the original question, no, there's really no magic number I could give anyone, because as we keep saying over and over, it really depends. And because the people in your organization can wear multiple hats, especially when you're starting out. But when you think about what it takes to run a learning management system, those are the high-level roles that I would consider and factor in when I'm considering what budget, at least from a headcount perspective, I might have to ask for.